What if I told you that the story of Israel stretches back millions of years? A land that has witnessed the birth of civilizations, empires, and religions. A land where history and prophecy, triumph and tragedy, conflict and coexistence have all left their mark. But this isn't just a story about ancient kings and long-forgotten ruins. The history of Israel is a saga still being written. From the prehistoric people who first roamed these lands, to the battles that echo through history, and the political struggles that persist today, this is the story of Israel. And trust me, it's not what you think. The mysterious beginnings. Let's start at the very beginning, long before written history, long before the great cities of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv were even dreams. Israel's story begins with prehistoric people who roamed these lands over 1.5 million years ago. Archaeological evidence from places like the Ubadia site reveals traces of early human ancestors living in the Levant, an area that includes modern Israel. And by around 120,000 years ago, anatomically modern humans, people who looked just like us, had already arrived here. These early humans didn't just survive, they thrived. The Natufian culture, emerging around 10,000 BCE, laid the foundations for the first agricultural communities. They were among the world's first farmers, cultivating the land that would later become the heart of some of the world's greatest empires. Enter the Canaanites. By 2000 BCE, the Canaanites, a group of ancient Semitic-speaking peoples, ruled the region. Their land, Canaan, was not a unified kingdom, but a patchwork of independent city-states. Each city had its own rulers, gods, and cultures, but they all shared a connection to this land. Canaan appears in the earliest records of Egypt and other Near Eastern civilizations. At times, they were vassals of the powerful Egyptian Empire, but Canaan was more than just a battleground for empires, it was a cultural melting pot that blended Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and local traditions. The Late Bronze Age collapse, a mysterious period around 1200 BCE, brought chaos to the region. Great empires crumbled, and out of this turmoil, new groups emerged. Among them was a people who would leave an indelible mark on history, the Israelites. The rise of the Israelites. The first mention of Israel comes from an Egyptian inscription, known as the Merneptah stele, dating back to around 1200 BCE. It speaks of a people named Israel living in Canaan. But who were these Israelites? Modern archaeology suggests that the Israelites were originally Canaanites who developed a unique identity. Over time, they transitioned from polytheism to worshipping a single deity, Yahweh. This shift from many gods to one God set them apart from their neighbors and would change the course of world history. Their story was passed down through sacred texts, the Torah and later, the Bible. But recent research has cast doubt on the historical accuracy of these texts. The stories of the Exodus, the conquest of Canaan, and the United Kingdom under Kings David and Solomon, are now seen more as legends than literal history. However, there's no question that by the 9th century BCE, a powerful kingdom of Israel did exist. It flourished under the Omride dynasty, controlling much of the land we now call Israel. Yet, this kingdom too, would fall. The fall of Israel and Judah. By 720 BCE, the mighty Neo-Assyrian Empire had conquered the kingdom of Israel. The kingdom was wiped out, and its people were scattered. Only the smaller southern kingdom of Judah, with its capital in Jerusalem, remained. But Judah's fate was no different. In 587 BCE, after a failed rebellion, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II captured Jerusalem, destroyed Solomon's temple, and exiled the Jewish elite to Babylon. It was one of the darkest moments in Jewish history. This exile, known as the Babylonian captivity, didn't just end a kingdom, it nearly destroyed a people. But out of this tragedy, something miraculous happened. The Jews didn't lose their identity. In exile, they solidified their faith and began to write down their sacred stories, the stories that would become the Hebrew Bible. Rebirth under the Persians. Salvation came in the form of Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Persian Empire. In 539 BCE, he conquered Babylon and issued a decree allowing the Jews to return to their homeland. Many returned to Jerusalem and began rebuilding their lives, and their temple. The Second Temple was completed by 520 BCE, marking the start of a new era in Jewish history. Yet, this time, they were no longer independent but part of the vast Persian Empire. For centuries, Judea was ruled by foreign empires, first the Persians, then Alexander the Great's successors, the Ptolemies and Seleucids. But these foreign rulers often allowed the Jews to practice their faith, as long as they paid tribute. The Maccabean Revolt and Roman Conquest. However, when the Seleucid king Antiochus IV attempted to forcibly Hellenize the Jews and desecrate their temple, it sparked a rebellion, the Maccabean Revolt. In 167 BCE, the Jewish Maccabees rose up, reclaiming Jerusalem and purifying the temple. Their victory led to the establishment of the Hasmonean Kingdom, a period of brief Jewish independence that would last for about a century. But in 63 BCE, the Roman Republic, ever expanding, marched into Judea and ended this fragile autonomy. Judea became a client state, eventually annexed into the Roman Empire in 6 CE. It was a period of growing tension as Jewish zealots chafed under Roman rule. Jewish-Roman wars and diaspora. Tensions boiled over in 66 CE, sparking the First Jewish-Roman War. It ended in disaster for the Jews. Jerusalem was captured, the Second Temple destroyed, and the Jewish people were once again scattered, exiled across the Roman Empire. A second revolt, the Bar Kokhba Revolt, erupted in 132 CE. Though initially successful, it was brutally crushed by the Romans. Jerusalem was transformed into a Roman colony, and the region was renamed Syria Palestina, a name meant to erase Jewish connections to the land. From this point onward, the Jewish population was scattered across the world, marking the beginning of the long Jewish diaspora. Yet, even in exile, the dream of returning to Israel never died. A land of conquerors, Byzantines, Muslims, and Crusaders. Over the centuries, control of this land shifted between empires. In the 4th century CE, the Roman Empire embraced Christianity, turning Jerusalem into a holy city for Christians. But in 634 CE, Muslim armies swept across the Middle East, bringing the land under Islamic control. Under Islamic rule, Jerusalem became a major pilgrimage site for Muslims, home to the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, places that remain central to the faith today. The Crusades in the 11th century brought bloodshed as Christian knights from Europe sought to reclaim the Holy Land. They held Jerusalem for a century, only to lose it again to the Muslim leader Saladin. The land was a battleground of faiths, each laying claim to its sacred sites. The Ottoman Era and the emergence of Zionism. For 400 years, from 1516 to 1917, the land of Israel was part of the Ottoman Empire. Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived here under a system of relative tolerance. But by the late 19th century, a new movement began to emerge, a movement that would change everything. The Zionist movement, founded by Theodor Herzl, sought to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. As anti-Semitism rose across Europe, many Jews began to look to their ancient homeland for refuge. By the late 1800s, Jewish immigration to Palestine had begun in earnest. Thousands arrived in search of a new life, escaping persecution in Europe. They established farming communities and built new towns, but tensions with the local Arab population were already beginning to simmer. British Mandate and the road to statehood. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire crumbled, and Palestine came under British control. The British, caught between the competing demands of Jews and Arabs, struggled to maintain peace. As Jewish immigration increased, so did tensions. Violent clashes erupted between Jewish and Arab communities. The British issued the Balfour Declaration in 1917, promising to support the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, but this only deepened the divisions. By the 1940s, the situation was spiraling out of control. Jewish and Arab militias were preparing for war, and British rule was becoming untenable. In 1947, the United Nations voted to partition Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, but this plan was rejected by the Arab world. The birth of Israel and the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion declared the establishment of the State of Israel. The following day, the armies of Egypt, Syria, Transjordan, and Iraq invaded, seeking to destroy the newborn state. After months of intense fighting, Israel emerged victorious, but the cost was immense. Over 700,000 Palestinian Arabs fled or were expelled from their homes, an event known as the Nakba, or catastrophe. Israel's borders were established along the 1949 armistice lines, but peace was elusive. The Arab-Israeli conflict had just begun. Conflict, war, and peace attempts. In the decades that followed, Israel faced existential threats from its neighbors, most notably during the Six-Day War in 1967 and the Yom Kippur War in 1973. Despite these wars, there were also moments of hope, like the peace treaty with Egypt in 1979, which made Egypt the first Arab state to recognize Israel. The 1990s saw new efforts at peace with the Oslo Accords, which granted limited autonomy to the Palestinians. But peace has been fragile, and the road to a lasting solution remains fraught with challenges. The modern struggle and ongoing conflict. Today, Israel remains at the center of one of the world's most complex and enduring conflicts. From the rise of Palestinian groups like Hamas to the tense relationship with Iran, Israel faces new challenges in an ever-changing Middle East. But Israel is more than just a land of conflict. It's a vibrant, modern state, home to cutting-edge technology, a rich cultural heritage, and resilient people who continue to build on the legacy of their ancient ancestors. The story of Israel is one of survival through exile, through persecution, through war. But it's also a story of hope and resilience, of a people determined to reclaim their land and their future. What does the future hold for Israel? Will there be lasting peace, or will the cycle of conflict continue? One thing is certain, the history of Israel is far from over, and the next chapter is being written as we speak. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the fascinating history of Israel, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more captivating historical explorations.